knock. Hi.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Knock Knock Hi with the Glaucomfleckens. I am Dr. Glaucomflecken, also known as William Flannery.
I am Lady Glaucomflecken, also known as Kristin Flannery.
You never call me William.
Only when I'm mad at you.
William?
Mm-hmm. Or when you're being, what's the word I'm looking for? When you're doing something that is not for your own good and you should know it.
As long as you don't say William.
William, yeah. That's how they do it sometimes in Texas.
That's some of my extended family.
Mm-hmm. William?
William? My mom's not quite that
She's
bad.
She's close, though. It's occasionally, I think, one slips out.
So this episode is...
Speaking of moms.
Yeah, I know, Mother's Day.
That's right.
So happy Mother's Day to you.
Thank you.
I'm recording this a little bit before Mother's Day, so I don't know what I'm planning for you yet, but it will happen. Shouldn't the kids be planning something for you?
At this point, I think
right?
Maybe both, because, listen, you had something to do with
No, I know. I'm not saying I shouldn't.
having to push those things out.
But at some point it is, because for a long time it's like I have to do all of the Mother's Day stuff.
Because they're too young.
Because they're too young. But they're getting to the age, right?
Absolutely.
They can really start taking some of the
I think they do. At least the younger one really enjoys holidays and celebrations and things. And so I think she has been doing that for a couple of years.
She's good at that. And I also kind of screwed up one Mother's Day pretty bad.
You sure did.
So I kind of have to make up for that. It was the day after Mother's Day when I had my little cardiac arrest.
Yeah, a little something.
Yeah,
happened there.
And so I had some making up to do. On that front.
Mother's Day used to be a real bummer because of that. It was a really hard day every year. But you know what has, and it's still hard. But do you know what helped a lot? Moving out of that house.
Really?
Because it was the weirdest things that would kind of trigger me. And it was like, oh, the tree outside our bedroom window has, its leaves are budding to the, same extent that they were that day. And the certain flowers in the backyard are blooming. Because it's, these things kind of happen at the same time every year. And so it's funny, the just sensory things that get kind of imprinted. Yeah. During moments like that. And so those were the types of things that like the smell of the air because of the things that were blooming and, just weird things like that. So moving out of the place where it happened was helpful. Like it still is somewhat triggering, but it's not as much.
Well, I guess I'm okay with the bigger mortgage then.
Yeah, there you go. I should start playing that card more when you complain about it.
Makes me feel a little bit better. We are, speaking of, telling stories and talking about things that have happened.
And mothers.
We are speaking to Becca Thompson, Dr. Thompson.
That's right.
So Dr. Thompson is a family physician and writer and has written a wonderful book called Held Together, a shared memoir of motherhood, medicine, and imperfect love. So we had a wonderful conversation with Dr. Thompson about her book and the process for coming up with the idea, and this very unique structure to the book and weaving in lots of different stories from different women.
Yeah, but not just their stories. Memoir, right? It's a shared memoir, so it's their stories
from their
where
perspective.
They worked collaboratively with her to write them. So it's pretty interesting for any book nerds, from that perspective.
Yeah, big collaborative effort. Mm-hmm. And speaking of, a level of collaboration, I think in a million years I could never.
Yeah, well, she said 10 years it took her to do all of that. Yeah. So
very impressive. So it's wonderful hearing her story and just the whole process with this book. And so should we get to it?
Let's do.
Here's our conversation with Dr. Becca Thompson. Hey, Kristin, remember how you love eyelid mites now?
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of confusion out there. I want to clear something up.
Okay.
All right. People think they can get eyelid mites from dogs and cats.
Can they?
No. These particular Demodex mites are specific to humans.
Okay.
So spread from dogs and cats is not expected. That's a myth.
Can't get them from cuddling our poodle.
No. Demodex mites that cause blepharitis, live on humans. Most adults already have them. They just usually don't cause problems. It's when they overgrow that they can lead to itchy, red, irritated eyelids, those little collarettes,
The crusties at the
That's
base of the
right. Right.
eyelashes. And the good news is there's a prescription eye drop available for Demodex
That
blepharitis.
is great news. To learn more about eyelid health and Demodex blepharitis, visit miteslovelids.com. Again, that's miteslovelids.com to learn more. This ad is brought to you by Tarsus Pharmaceuticals. All right, here we are with Dr. Rebecca N. Thompson. Becca, it's okay to call you Becca? That's okay?
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, thanks for having me, and thanks to Kristin for discovering my book and reaching out. I'm really happy to be here.
Yeah. How did that
Yeah.
happen? Can you?
Through LinkedIn and the magic of the algorithms, suggests people to you based on your profile and what you're posting and who's interacting with it. And
Well,
so she
Yeah.
popped up.
Well, Dr. Thompson here is, and her book. It's certainly up our alley,
Yeah.
right? With
Yes.
what we focus on, which is a lot of storytelling,
Yep.
and I think storytelling is so powerful. And so, the first thing I want to ask, we're going to get into this amazing book, Held Together. One question we had, this is I have never seen this, and Kristen pointed out to me, a shared memoir. Like we see a lot of memoirs, obviously. A lot of people have great stories to tell. But talk to us about doing a shared memoir, because I think that's going to be a new concept to a lot of people.
Thanks for pointing that out. And, it was new to me as well. It's what I wanted and I couldn't find it. So like they say, write the book you want to read. So yes, it's a shared memoir about kind of the many ways that we create and sustain families of all kinds and the layers of those relationships over generations. And because I wanted it to have all of these components and be about the long view and so many different aspects of these relationships, I wanted the project to be bigger than just my own family story.
Hmm.
And so I captured the voices of 21 other women along with my own, women whose stories and lives have intersected with my own over even the past 30 years or so, just in many different ways, many different relationships. But the origin story, of course, of the book is sort of in my own complicated path to family, to motherhood.
Yeah. Would you mind sharing some of that with us?
Yeah, sure. And I can say more later too about the process of creating the shared memoir. I'd love to get into that. But for backstory, I think it's good to
Yeah.
explain that origin. So, my own path to parenthood was very much less than straightforward.
Mhm.
And we had my husband and I had a string of pregnancy losses and rare medical conditions that even surprised and baffled my own medical team at the time they were going
Mm.
on. Um, that's something you all will relate to as well, these
Mhm.
rare,
Yes.
out of the blue things. And I'm happy to talk about any of those details, but I think the big picture, what I really took away from those experiences as I lived through them and then got some distance from them was that even as a doctor myself, navigating this all was so difficult, confusing, and so isolating that it really motivated me to I wanted to create something positive out of it and not just have it be all these struggles and individual experiences that made no sense. And um, so I wanted to do something to preserve the stories that would help other people feel less alone when they were going through these kinds of things. Um, you know, it would have helped me so much during those times to have something that showed me the longer view of family life and of relationships, of community, if I could have made sense of it all a little bit more. So I hope that our stories will offer a glimpse of that to others along the way as they're going through these kinds of experiences.
What was it about the long view that you really wanted and were missing?
Yeah, there are so many books about amazing, fertility challenges and birth stories and advice books about early parenthood and how to navigate that. Those are great resources. But what I really wanted was something that incorporated those kinds of ideas of the lived experiences of, myself, my patients, my colleagues in medicine, my friends whose stories I knew now understood in a totally different way after having been through this myself. But I wanted it to span, from fertility and pregnancy issues to raising kids in a complex world and navigating family relationships over years and decades. And I just wanted it to be far beyond those early days. We kind of drop the narrative so often after we get through the event, the crisis, then we stop talking about it. And I wanted to really explore the deeper meanings of those experiences as they resonated through our lives and the repercussions and the ripples they had onto other people's lives too, where we intersected.
Oh, that resonates a lot because, one thing that we both talk about is how, you have the story of what happened to you. And, for us it was cardiac arrest, uh, and medical education.
Yeah.
So
Don't forget the little
that's
bitty cancers.
and the kids, yeah. So the things there's the thing that happened to you,
Yeah.
and there's surviving that, or just like getting through the actual medical, issue recovery. But there is this whole world of recovery that people you don't even as the person that it's happening to you, like you don't
Yeah.
realize the extent of that recovery
Right.
that's going to take that we're still going through
Yeah, I like to
ourselves.
frame it as there's surviving and survival. And surviving is, you make it to discharge and go home. And then survival is the rest of your life because it
Yeah.
really is just, things like this are life changing events that you might move forward from them, but there's no like getting over it or moving, you know,
Mm.
past it. You just learn to live with it and it
Yeah,
kind of
you
becomes
integrate it.
part of
You
your
integrate it
identity.
into your
Yeah.
identity. Your identity. And I think this has a lot to do with the difference between disease and illness, right? So we can have this scientific experience. A disease is a thing that happens we read about in a textbook. But then there's that lived experience and the narrative medicine, the storytelling, the meaning that we make, not just find, but create and make the meaning from what we've
Hmm.
been through.
I think it's fascinating that you found stories or people that not just like kind of you know living alongside you, but also interacted and crossed paths with you. So can you tell us a little bit about the process of finding these stories?
Yeah, well, that is my great privilege. These are just people that I knew. I didn't go out and recruit stories for certain themes or anything like that. Now, granted, it took a little bit more than 10 years to do this project. It wasn't it wasn't like I just assembled everybody and instantly grabbed their stories.
Right.
And this isn't an anthology. So I didn't want to just have people write something down and hand it to me and maybe lightly edit it. This is a really collaborative work. So what happened was essentially after I'd gone through these complications, I realized that I wanted to go back and do more training in women's and children's health. I did a second residency in family medicine.
Mm.
And
Oh,
after I
so that
did
was
that,
after
yeah, that
your
was my
medical
second.
issues.
Mhm. The
Oh
the
wow.
first
Okay.
residency was in public health and preventive medicine. I was working in environmental public health.
Oh,
I have to say,
interesting.
I think you guys need to add to your respect ladder. I don't think you mentioned public health and
Oh,
preventive medicine, and
I
it's a
didn't.
good point.
the one
You're right.
specialty that, and there are data to back this up, lowers your earning potential if you do
Yeah,
this
Oh, is that
wow.
training.
really? Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
Okay.
It's also having a rough go in the public.
Yeah.
Yeah.
it
Oh
sure
my gosh.
is. So family medicine, public health, like I've got the winning combination right there. Um,
Yeah.
so I went back to do this family medicine residency because I wanted to give back for some of the amazing care I'd received, the literally life-saving care that I received, and, do better than some of the dismissive care that had happened too.
Yeah. Yeah.
And when I did that, meeting all these people, this is how a lot of the people came into the book. Some of them I'd known way before that from college and, years past. But many of them were my patients during that residency, then kind of followed me into my practice after residency and maybe brought their kids in and I became their kids doctor too. And it was all these, again, layers and generations. Um, and I also saw so many of my medical colleagues. Now, a lot of us were at that point, in our 30s, kind of thinking about starting families, as so many medical professionals do, deferring that a little bit. And many of them were struggling in different ways and forming their families in maybe less conventional, more creative ways and defining family in new ways. And so the training combined with my own experience as a patient, having become a patient,
Hmm.
that was the origin of this. And I wanted to collaborate with each woman individually of, the 21 women. Some of them know each other, but the stories are told individually, each of their stories. My story, we pause at intervals where each other person's story intersects, and you get part of my story,
Mm.
in chunks throughout the book. But each of the other women has her own discrete narrative within the book. So these are all people that I just organically know. And as I thought of this idea, as I was kind of in a transition point between one practice and another and wanting to carve out some more time to work on a project like this, I asked each of them, invited each of them to collaborate with me. We did hours and hours of recorded interviews, oral history, transcribing that. Many of the people, let's just say, that's the whole of how we wrote the story was oral history. And then I would use that to write it in her voice and kind of give it back to her, see how I did, work on it iteratively over several years. Some people had journal entries or essays they may have written or emails to friends and family during a time of
Mhm.
crisis or challenge that they shared with me. But the common denominator was all these recorded interviews.
Mm.
And in in every case, I tried to preserve her voice, but overlay kind of a cohesive tone to the whole book. So they're all written in first person, but they're all from the perspective of the person whose story it is.
Mm.
Mhm.
And, this gets at your question about kind of how it started and how I found the people and why I wanted to do it, because I love medical memoir. And there's lots of that out there. I've read that, even before I didn't plan to go to medical school growing up. I stumbled into that, and that's another story, maybe for another day. But I've always loved stories about people's lives. I was an anthropology major in college, essentially, and went back to do a post-bac night school kind of thing.
Mm.
So I felt like all of these amazing medical memoirs they told the story of the doctor's point of view so compellingly and talked about the patients they met and their patient stories and how those patient stories impacted the clinician. That's amazing. It's beautiful. I love those books. But they don't tell the patient story.
Hmm.
And when we do tell the patient story, it's still usually in the third person. I wanted the direct perspective of the patient. And I wanted those patients also to have, I want to say, some insight into I wanted them to have thought about their story in some way that was unusual or interesting, even though the stories are we're all ordinary people. I like to say these are the extraordinary moments in ordinary lives.
Mhm.
I wanted to capture those. And so to write these stories, to write each story in first person, to use her words, but craft it almost like a work of fiction, but all of it is true. I've been told it reads like a novel, but it's all true. And I love that's a huge compliment. So I really always appreciate that. But many people have told me that.
No, I love that approach. You're absolutely right. I don't think we hear enough from the patient perspective, and weaving in and out of different narratives. Can you, I guess, give us a little bit of your story, if you don't mind,
Yeah,
if
sure.
it's.
Absolutely. So back when I was finishing up that first residency, that public health residency, that felt like a pretty good time to think about starting a family. My husband and I were in kind of our late 20s, early 30s. We're a few years apart in age, but about that age. And when residency was wrapping up, it's like a logical time, logical break. And I was about to be starting a more predictable job than residency had been. And very quickly, and say kind of painfully, poetically, in the span of 9 months, we had three very complicated pregnancy losses, including two that were life threatening to me. Surgeries, chemotherapy, all sorts of confusing and messy medical situations, and an ambulance ride as well.
Yeah.
Not quite as dramatic as yours, but like, ugh,
Well, sounds
it was a
It's
lot.
not a
dramatic.
competition.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
Well,
right.
and we should talk about that too, because that's such an interesting theme that our work shares. Let's come back to that. But so it just really, it was so hard to navigate, even with the privilege I
Mm.
had of medical knowledge, insider, training, all of that.
Was it part of of your story that prompted you to pursue another residency? Was that
Yes,
kind of the lead into
exactly.
that? Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly. So what happened was, as I was going through that, I was kind of finishing that program and then was new faculty doing public health research, environmental public health, specifically in peds, public health cancer survivorship, young adult cancer survivorship. I've worked at like a lot of oncology camps. I love that work. But then I felt like, oh, I'm learning so much, good and bad, about what can be done in these situations. I really want to give back. I had one doctor you meet in the book early on, Devora. She and I were both residents when we met in the emergency room, or one of my medical situations, let's just say. Um, and she just took the most amazing care of me over a long time. That was just the beginning. That moment we met, you see early on in the book. And then she weaves in and out of my story. And at the very end of the book, the last other woman's story is hers. You get to learn how she became that amazing clinician who was able to take care of me exactly how she would have wanted to be taken care of if the situation had been reversed.
Mhm.
But back in that day, when it all was starting, I already felt that I wanted to give back. And so I started thinking about, okay, how can I, apply to a family medicine residency? I was already working. I was on faculty at OHSU, actually, like kind of junior
Oh,
faculty.
wow.
Um,
Yeah.
and I thought, okay, I'm going to go start back at the bottom of the hierarchy, the bottom of that
Yeah.
respect ladder. But I applied to family medicine residency. I tell all about this in the book too, but
Mhm.
basically, I had talked to the director, who was also, someone I was working with as a supervisor in this research role I was doing, and thought, okay, could I come back in? And like, when could I join? Okay, maybe apply for the match. Oh, there might be an opening this spring, like someone might switch fields. Oh, wait, never mind, that's not going to work out. Well, a day and a half after he said that wasn't going to work out, you should apply for the match next year. He called me up and was like, actually, one of the interns didn't show up. Do you want to start in like a week?
Oh,
Like, oh
wow.
my
Whoa.
God. So meanwhile,
I
I
just
didn't
didn't
know it yet.
show up. How
Yeah.
about
She
that?
just, she
Okay.
just, she was, the way that it was told to me is she was driving up the hill and she like saw the hospital. You can picture, we have that spaceship
Yeah.
looking hospital up on the hill,
Oh,
the
yeah.
Death Star, some of us had called it. Um, she she looks at that and is like, "Nope, I'm out." And she turns
Oh,
Whoa.
around and like,
wow.
that's probably a dramatization, but that's
Cold
the story
feet.
that I
It's
heard.
okay. This is the first time I've ever heard of a
Very
no-show to
cold
residency.
feet.
I know.
I mean, it was a week ahead
But
of time. She didn't completely no show, but
right.
she bailed. And
Yeah.
But worked out to
thank
your
you to
benefit.
her.
Yeah.
Thank you to
Yeah.
her, because it shaped the entirety of the rest of my career, and I hope I made good
Yeah.
use of all that. And so that was we had been cleared to try again to get pregnant really recently, from after all the chemotherapy and all that, kind of the monitoring after that. Um, and I like to say I was, 20 minutes pregnant, but I didn't know it yet when I started that residency. I got the call, essentially I say the baby was planned, but the residency was a surprise.
Yeah.
Mm.
And that
That's
is
usually the
exactly
other way
what
around.
happened. Yeah, and so 9 months to the day that I got the call saying, "Come to the residency now. How about now?" My son was born. Our son was born.
Oh, wow.
9 months
Wow.
the day on a Friday the 13th. They were Friday the 13th, which is lucky in our family. So it's just kind
Yeah,
of
of
like it
course.
all fits together. But yes, long way to say, absolutely, these experiences were exactly what motivated me to go back and do that second residency. And I mean, shaped, like, obviously this influenced my personal life, but like it completely shaped my career and my professional life. And logistically, that residency, but also even now, and I'm jumping ahead to say, but to be such an advocate for reproductive rights and understanding, listening to patients and their families, and knowing that each person really has to decide what is right for them, because we can never know everyone's full story. We try if we're
Yeah.
compassionate and thoughtful about it, but we just never know. The stories are so much deeper than we can guess just by these meetings that we have in clinic.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get asked a
Mm.
lot, how my health issues, changed my practice, and, I've got a lot of answers for that, and
I bet.
so, 'cause there's a lot of different parts of the experience, like, which experience you talking about?
Yeah.
Are you asking
Right,
about?
right. Be
Because
more
it
specific.
right, but it does, and it sounds like certainly for you as well, it absolutely changes. For me, the biggest change was, uh, being more open in just having a discussion about the healthcare system, because that was a big part of our story, was having to navigate and struggle through getting bills covered that needed to be covered and surprise billing and all this stuff. It was about a 9-month battle for us to try to, we didn't have a baby at the end of it, but it
Oh,
was a 9-month,
neither did
struggle
I for
to
that one.
Yeah.
uh,
I
before
hear
it finally
you.
got all resolved. But now, like, I am, because I sympathize with what patients go through on the billing side of things and the health system navigation. And so, yeah, I talk about that with patients now. And before I might not have done that.
Yeah, I think that's really what our work has so much in common, is it's this kind of creative advocacy, right?
Mhm.
And it's we go through something life altering and we choose to speak out about it, and it shifts our careers and we end up dedicating our lives to it. I mean, it's not just about the patient, it's about the co-survivors, it's about how the stories affect whole families and whole communities, not just that person experiencing medical events. But I feel like we're all striving in different ways in this space to to give voice to others, and create spaces where it's actually healing to talk about difficult topics and find comfort in uncomfortable ideas.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's take a quick break, and then I have one thing I wanna talk about with the structure of your book that really resonates a lot with us. Hey, Kristen,
Yeah.
you know how people probably know we love Cozy Earth?
Oh.
We're recording with a bed in the background and a
Mhm.
Cozy Earth blanket nearby,
That is true.
just in case.
Yep. I've got one in just about every room. I never wanna be without them. They're
You
so soft.
and you work from home, so you look really cozy most of the time.
Yeah, I love a good cozy lounge outfit. I cannot wear hard pants
So,
when
like,
I'm
the
in my home.
bamboo jogger set, those
Exactly.
look great,
I can work and be comfy, and then I could also just pop out and run to the grocery store, pick up a kid from school.
and your feet. Yeah, I've
Mhm.
been seeing you wearing the clogs.
Yeah, those are really comfy.
It's a cushioned footbed, the soft
Mhm.
interior. It makes me wanna work from home.
I know.
And now Cozy Earth gives you a 100-night sleep trial and a 10-year warranty on their products. This spring, give yourself the kind of comfort that lives with you all day, not just the moment you get home. Head to CozyEarth.com and use my code KNOCK for an exclusive 20% off. And if you see a post-purchase survey, mention that you heard about Cozy Earth right here on Knock Knock High. Comfort lives here. All right, we are back with Dr. Rebecca N. Thompson. So, Becca, one thing you said earlier, where you just made a real quick comment about you had excellent care, but also there are some not so excellent parts of your experience as well. And it got me thinking about, talking about memoirs and this idea of a shared memoir and addressing other stories. If I were to write a memoir about the cardiac arrest,
Mhm.
it would be totally different than Kristen's memoir would be. Even though, like, our experiences are inextricably linked. You know, we it affected both of us, but our experiences are so different. And when you're talking about, like, a memoir, which is a great thing to be able to do and tell your story, it is it often it's not the entire story. even if it's maybe just everything I know about the story, right? And so like from my perspective, I got great care, excellent care. Like everything was, I'm alive. Like what could I possibly complain about? But for Kristin, it would be a little bit more of some of the things that you talk about, just in terms of some of the I don't want to say failures, but
Difficulties.
difficulties and shortcomings. We'll say shortcomings
Shortcomings, that's a good word.
of either the care or the medical system.
Mhm.
And so approaching the book the way you have, I think allows all that stuff to come into it, right? Both the good and the bad.
I agree. I think having multiple perspectives around the same topic too, multiple stories around the same kind of overarching theme, I think gets at that too. Because in our case, it was kind of same story, two different sides,
Yeah.
of the same coin, essentially. And in this shared memoir approach, it's multiple stories, but by doing that, you can see how so many of what they all have in common, and you can start to see kind of a theme in how um, the healthcare system, kind of like you were saying, succeeds and has room to grow, as we say in education. So I think there's power in that too, and just sharing all the different stories around the same theme, and that's a really cool approach.
Thanks. Yeah, that really did show me this approach really did show me those common threads too. I mean, I think so many of the stories, all of the stories in the book are so specific. You can read this and think, well, that's never going to happen to me. But you start reading and, or even for me, listening to people's stories and doing this and feeling like, well, wow, it resonates so deeply, even though the details are completely different from my own life. The themes are so universal that come up in the threads that you see among them. And whether that's, the good or the bad within the healthcare system, I will say we really made an intentional effort to not to sugarcoat things that didn't go well at all, but to be generous, to try to not really slam anybody. Even when big mistakes were made, we tried to show compassion to the clinicians who made the mistakes or the family members who maybe didn't handle things so well, or when relationships fell apart. We made it a point not to just let it devolve into negativity about those situations, but to show the parts that were about the growth, the learning from it, the change that the person telling her story experienced because of it without getting into, um, complaining about it, frankly.
Oh, we have so much we could complain about, though.
We could, but that would be a much longer book, and the book is already pretty
It
long.
would be.
So I wanted to focus on the things that, were empowering. Because I
Right,
will say,
yeah,
although these things are really difficult, this is not a sad book. This is a
yeah.
really fiercely optimistic book, and it's even sometimes funny. I mean, if you can believe it, in the midst of these kinds of stories, I
We
think you
built a
can.
whole business around that
I
idea.
Yeah, that's right. We love that idea.
know. So it's really important, I think, when we're thinking about our own stories or reading other people's stories to find wisdom for our own lives, to know that we're going to get through these kinds of things. They're not all going to just be sad and discouraging. It's about seeing yourself in these others, in the universal themes, in the ordinary moments, and knowing that if we got through this, then you certainly can too, because you're just one of us.
And knowing how common it is for people to go through things like this. Like you said, the details might be different, but the sort of universal experience is just part of being a human, and we just don't talk about it. And I think a lot of people are afraid to ask about it because they're worried they might upset you or, bring back bad memories or things. And sometimes that might be the case, but I think a lot more than people realize. The reason we don't talk about them is our own discomfort of hearing other people's sad stories and not knowing what to say. It's not as much for the person who had the experience not wanting to talk about it. Often you need to talk about it. And we just sort of haven't figured that out collectively of how can we talk about these really difficult things in a way that doesn't, scare people off or make other people uncomfortable or what have you. But we really, it's worth looking into because it is just such a universal human experience. We're all going to have times where something really difficult happens to us, and you don't want to be alone and isolated in that. So normalizing this idea of sharing our stories and talking about the hard things in ways that don't feel bad, that don't just leave you feeling bad, I think is so important just to help people get comfortable with topics like loss and illness and death and all of these things that are just part of being human.
Absolutely. And this reminds me so much about the parts of your work too, Kristen, where you talk about like when you're if it didn't as a co-survivor, right? This experience
Mhm.
didn't happen to me, so like I shouldn't feel bad about it. I'll just be a burden to others if I talk about it or complain. And
Mhm.
like even if I feel bad, like my partner or my friend, whoever you're supporting through it, like, oh, they have it much worse, so I shouldn't
Right.
complain. Um,
Mhm.
but this comes back to this idea: grief is not a contest, right?
Right.
And
Yeah.
it's
Right.
that's literally a line in my book and could be in all of your work too. It's there's no need to measure ourselves against each other. If we are going to compare, it should be to find commonality, to find those threads, not because we're trying to win anything. And not
Right.
only is grief not a contest, but compassion is not a pie. So
Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
just
Right.
because someone else receives some, it doesn't mean there won't be enough left for us.
Yeah,
Right.
it's more of an all you can eat buffet.
Yeah.
It's
It's a buffet.
Exactly.
yeah.
It's a
Yeah.
and suffering and compassion, both an all you can eat buffet.
That's
It is
right.
true.
It's true. I wanted to ask just a logistical question about being having a career and then making this decision to write this book. How difficult was it to find space in your life to do this, to take this project on?
Um, it was difficult and also really easy. Okay, so it was difficult because to find any huge chunks of time is nearly impossible. As when I started this, my kids were, say, 5 and 2.5.
Mm.
They're both teenagers now because, math. It's been more than a
Yeah,
decade.
yeah,
Um, and so I wrote a lot of this book in, car pickup lines and in between moments. It was really hard to carve out big chunks of time, but it was really easy to jot down an idea here and there. And over such a long time, that really added up. And,
mm,
I found that I had to just see those in between moments and realize that there was some potential in them, even if it was just 20 minutes here and there. Um, I could pick up where I'd left off in thinking about it. And sometimes that was even better because then it was still fresh in my mind from the 20 minutes I'd had 2 days earlier rather than getting,
right.
going on a writer's retreat, which I've never been able to do anything like that particularly.
What about scaling back your, like, clinical career? Was that a big decision for you to make, and did you get any pushback on that?
I mean, I've had so many different roles over the years. I think it was more like it's more just been a variation over time rather than a linear scaling back. So
Right.
I've done everything from, full spectrum primary care, including deliveries and prenatal care and obstetrics and, birth to death, before birth and to death. And I've worked on telemedicine services to help provide, care, triage type care for remote communities, whether they should go into the ER, those kinds of questions. I've worked with community groups to do sporting events. My origins were, as I said, in anthropology, but also in wilderness medicine. So I've done a lot of backcountry type medicine. And essentially, as I realized I wanted to do this project, I was already going to be scaling back the practice I was in because I knew that I couldn't sustain that with a 2.5 and a 5-year-old.
Oh.
And my husband works full time as well. He's an engineer. He's not in medicine, but full time job. I knew it wasn't going to work to keep doing deliveries and working, well over full time hours, even though I was officially being paid for part time. So that was already in the works. And then over the past 10 years, that's just kind of evolved to ebb and flow with the time. And
Yeah.
I hope that whatever I do for clinical practice at any given phase and even in any given season of my life, it informs the writing and the advocacy and the outreach that I can do with this kind of work
Right.
too.
That's how I feel with, trying to juggle both the clinical and
Yeah. Yeah. How do
all
you
the extra
experience
stuff.
that?
Yeah, yeah, it's a similar way. Like could I really cut back and maybe even stop, seeing patients? Yeah, we could probably make that work, but do I want to? No. I still love it. I still like doing it, and it does inform, the other things I do. If I stopped seeing patients, I think some of the things I advocate for and the criticism I have for the healthcare system, it would carry a little bit less weight, because I would no longer be like in it and, experiencing it and kind of more up to date with what's
Well,
happening.
and
But
have skin in the game,
yeah,
you know?
that's a great way of putting it. Skin in the game. Uh, so are you nearing the end of your book tour? Is this because you've been busy?
Oh, who
It's been
could
like a
say?
year. Yeah,
It has been
yeah,
just
yeah.
almost a year. I will talk about this as long as anybody wants to talk about this because
That's a good point. Good point.
I
You put
mean,
a lot of
this
your
is
life into it.
really it is, but this is by far the life work that I want to leave in the world, and
Mhm.
this is the meaning of everything I've done. It feels like it came together into this project, and as much as I've enjoyed, portions of individual clinical work, I feel like with this I can reach such a wider group of people. I can help more people. It's almost like the public health lens versus the primary care lens in clinic. This is like
Mhm.
my public health intervention of storytelling, not just listening to a patient's history, but like translating these histories into a bigger picture. And another thing that I'm really eager to do right now, and I'm just getting started on after the year was like so much of the mainstream publishing world of lots of podcasts and book events and interviews and write ups. And that's great. That's been amazing. I'm so grateful for all that. But the next phase that I'm just kind of getting into in the past few months is bringing this more into medical training settings. So I really want this to inform future generations of clinicians, doctors, nurses, midwives, doulas, psychologists, social workers, like anybody that could benefit and be interested to learn the context of their patients' lives. So, and use that for their care. So I've been doing some events up here at OHSU in Oregon, and I've got a stop in the Bay Area planned where I did most of my training down in the Bay Area before moving up here. I'm from the East Coast, but I went to med school and did residency and my master's degree in epidemiology out in the Bay Area. So going back there to give back, and with Devora, she and I are traveling there together to do events
Oh,
and
Oh, that's
train some of
great.
the OBs. And also with another of the collaborators, Tess, who's a child psychiatrist, she and I will be speaking with psychiatry groups there as well. So
Great.
we're working on that. And
cool.
like, I really want to do more and more of that locally or virtually to just get this into the hands of as many current faculty and doctors and medical professionals of all kinds, but also the trainees, because we want to like help shape that kind of
Absolutely.
education.
It'd definitely be helpful. Well, as we wrap up here, the book is called "Held Together: A Shared Memoir of Motherhood, Medicine, and Imperfect Love." So you got a little copy of it back there behind you,
I
and
do.
people can find more about you and the book at your website, RebeccaInThompson.com. Is that right? And anything
That's right.
else that we missed, or is that
Um, I guess I would two things I would include with that. And if you are gonna go and buy the book to support us, thank you so much. If you want to do it through the website, there's a link that sends a portion of there are affiliate links for PSI, Postpartum Support International, which supports maternal and family mental health. And a portion of the proceeds go to them if you buy it through those affiliate links on the website. And in terms of other, speaking events, medical schools, we've been donating all the profits from any speakers' fees or anything like that, 100% going to organizations like this as well that support women's and children's health. So Planned Parenthood, Resolve,
fantastic?
Trevor Project, a few other things like that. So just, please reach out for those ideas. And I guess I also the thing I'd like to leave people with and just kind of think about the big picture of our stories and Held Together is, it has to do with this time of year. So we're in the spring as of recording. We're heading like spring and early summer. We're heading into this time where our culture tells us we're supposed to be happy. It's a season of new growth and rebirth and enjoy every moment of your life and parenthood and all these cliches, right? And we wrote this book because while there's a lot of joy in it to celebrate those kinds of moments, coming up on Mother's Day, for example. And I know that's a bittersweet anniversary for you all, too, with the timing of your cardiac arrest, Will. And people can find joy in these holidays and anniversaries and moments, but they can also be really hard and complicated. And so I think stories like these and stories like yours, they remind us to think about the joyful parts and celebrate the women and children and families in our lives, but also that it's okay to have a complicated relationship with parenthood, with family, whether you struggle to become a parent or you maybe are estranged from your own mother or family members or don't have them in your lives anymore, or you've had to really redefine what family means to you. This is more inclusive, and it's a place where grief and joy and regret and gratitude can all converge. And I think that we need a lot more of those inclusive stories as we think about what family needs.
Yeah, I agree that
Well
that
said.
is just what that's what those experiences are like in real life, right? There's good parts, bad parts, hard parts, fun parts. And yeah, we get the messaging that we're only allowed to talk out loud about certain pieces of that. So really grateful for stories like yours and books like yours that seek to kind of push it beyond that.
Yes, and same to you. I mean, I feel like it's just the biggest honor to do this work. It's so rewarding, and I just think there's nothing that compares. And I'm so grateful to meet others like you along the way who are doing it too. It gives me a little bit of hope in these challenging
Yeah.
times.
Well, thank you so much for coming on, Dr. Thompson, and for your work and advocacy, and keep it up.
Same to you. Thank you so much.
Should you and me do a shared memoir? Maybe you just do your memoir and I just put footnotes.
Footnotes.
How about that?
Like you're correcting me or something?
No, just adding some a
Little
different
commentary.
different commentary and context.
Well, I don't know if you remember this, but you've already agreed to write the foreword of my
did I?
memoir. Yes.
I got this sense I didn't have a choice.
Correct.
But I'd be happy to. I'd love to.
Uh-huh. That's the better
I'll
answer.
write whatever forward, afterward.
You're the one that's
interword,
suggesting footnotes, though.
Footnotes. I'll give you some footnotes.
I don't know. It would be interesting. We did a newsletter issue one time like that, where you kind of told your side and I told my side, but it was all woven together into the same story. So,
Do you know what footnotes reminds me of?
what?
Is the book The Princess Bride by William Goldman.
Why?
Because he had a lot of footnotes.
Oh, I've never actually read the book. I've only seen
You
the movie.
should. It's charming.
Yeah.
It's great. That's the one thing I enjoyed in my my freshman college intro, like honors class. It was like an English, like first year freshman English class. We read that book. And I loved it. And then after that, I had to read Jane Eyre, and I wanted to claw my eyes out.
That's really saying something.
Not
from
for
a
me.
Future ophthalmologist.
It was just not for me. Okay. Anyway, I don't know why I'm talking about classic literature here.
Shared memoirs.
But yes, shared memoirs. Yeah. Let us know what you thought of the episode, folks. You can email us, knockknockhi@human-content.com. Visit us and Human Content Pods, Instagram, TikTok. Check it out at Human Content Pods. Thanks to all the great listeners leaving feedback and reviews. At Julia Benford, 6500 on YouTube, said, social media etiquette is so needed. By the way, Julia Benford, 6500, Thanks. Nice job spelling etiquette. That's impressive.
Yes.
It's a hard word to spell.
And to say, apparently.
There's a lot of T's in there. There's some E's. Thanks for the tips. Yes, social media etiquette, especially for physicians and healthcare professionals.
Yes.
Like really super important topic.
And those in training.
Full video episodes are up every week on our YouTube channel at Glaucomfleckens. We also have a Patreon. Lots of fun perks, bonus episodes, hang out with other members of the Knock Knock Hi community. Patreon.com/Glaucomflecken or go to Glaucomflecken.com to learn more. Patreon community perks. Let's shout out the Jonathan, shall
Let's do.
Lucia C., Edward K., Marion W., Mr. Granddaddy, Caitlin C., Brown, LMP Cole, JC, Tracy B., Tracy B., Mary H., Keith G., Parker, Muhammad L., David H., Kaylee A., Gabe, Gary M., Eric B., Marlene S., Scott M., Kelsey M., Dr. Hoover, Sean M., Ryan N., Jess K., Hawkeye MD, Bubbly Salt, Shotty D. Patreon roulette time. Random shout out to some of the emergency medicine tier. Shout out to Jennifer S. for being a patron. Thank you, Jennifer. And thank you all for listening. We're your hosts, Will and Kristen Flannery, also known as the Glaucomfleckens. Our executive producers are Will Flannery, Kristen Flannery, Aaron Corney, Rob Goldman, and Shanti Burke. Our editor and engineer is Jason Portiz. Our music is by Omer Bensby. To learn about Knock Knock Hi's program, disclaimer, ethics, policy, submission, verification, licensing terms, and HIPAA release terms, go to glaucomflecken.com or reach out to us, knockknockhi@human-content.com with questions, concerns, or fun medical puns.
I think you should start singing the outro.
Knock Knock Hi is a human content production.
Knock, knock, goodbye.
Thanks for watching the episode. You can find more on that playlist over there. If you prefer to listen or you just had your eyes dilated, you can binge full episodes wherever you get your podcasts. Or join the party over on Patreon, where you get early access episodes, hang out with us, get lots of exclusive bonus content. Help you subscribe, leave a comment below. Let us know what you think.